We have free seedlings to give away. And with that, at this time, I'd like to introduce Mayor John Hamilton.
That's all you're doing, just read what kind of seedlings? What kind of seedlings? Come on, tell them.
We have several different oak trees. We have some sycamores and walnuts. Free trees.
Woo. Okay, that's good for Arbor Day. Official Arbor Day in Indiana is the last Friday in April, but we moved it to today to accommodate some major tree planting projects that were best done in the last 2 weeks of April. So I want to note that today we are celebrating our 35th consecutive year of being named a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation. Bloomington, hold your breath, Bloomington was the first tree city in Indiana, given that status, and we've been committed to that since 1984. The official 2019 Arbor Day tree is a Princeton Century Ginkgo. What do I need to know about that, Lee? What's a Princeton Century Ginkgo?
The one thing you got to remember about ginkgos, there's two sexes, male and female. You do not want the female. The female produces a very nasty fruit. Yes.
What do we give?
We're just planting the one, and it's a male.
Okay. A Princeton Century Ginkgo being planted here along the Beeline Trail, where we've removed several invasive flowering pear trees. Now, I just want to let you know that 2019, the number of trees that we have planted this spring is a staggering number. On April 24th in Southeast Park, we planted 200 native hardwood bare root saplings along the creek at Southeast Park. A new forested buffer strip along the creek will help reduce erosion. And this project actually began last year with the planting of 1,300 mixed native hardwood bare root saplings. On April 27th, on Earth Day Goat Farm tree planting, volunteers helped our Parks and Rec staff plant 400 native hardwood trees and shrubs to reforest the valley between the Goat Farm Prairie and the Sherwood Oaks Park playground. This reforesting will help reduce flooding in the park and along the Jackson Creek Trail. The trees will also create habitat for birds and other animals. Thanks to Ecologic, who donated 400 trees that were planted there. 2018, the urban foresters planted 406 public trees, pruned over 1,000, and removed 476 dangerous trees. In addition, treated 220 ash trees to protect them. That's a lot of work. Thank you, city foresters. In 2019, we're doing a lot more work with a complete inventory of our street trees, about 15,000 of them, doing great detail on that work. And I also want to note that just in the last week of April, 1 week of April, landscaping staff planted, listen to this, 4,300 native hardwood bare root saplings. Is that a record? Have you ever planted 4,500 trees in 1 week? A new Bloomington record. Along the Bloomington Rail Trail to reforest the original corridor. It has been intensively managed along the rail trail to eliminate and reduce invasive plant species, to allow forest habitat, native habitat, which will support native wildlife, etc. Also thanks to Ecologic, who donated 1,500 of those trees. Now, there are a lot of people to thank. I want to thank our Bloomington Parks and Rec staff, all the people who work there, and I also want to thank particularly the volunteers of the Bloomington Tree Commission. Each of our Tree Commission members brings expertise and knowledge and help manage our urban forest for all the benefits we get. Give it up for Carrie Bridges, Tom Coleman, Lauren Cohen, David Dilcher, George Hegman, and Maya Williams for their vigilance in protecting our urban forest. Yeah, Bloomington Tree Commission. Finally, I'm going to read a proclamation to name this Arbor Day. I'm not going to read the whole thing. We've been observing Arbor Day. Who knows how long we've been observing Arbor Day? 50 years, 100 years, or over 100 years? Over 100 years. Nice, close. Thank you for guessing. 1896, we've been observing in Indiana Arbor Day. And we celebrate the value of trees, the way they protect our community, make us healthier. We are celebrating our 35th anniversary of Tree City. So I am proclaiming May 4th, 2019 as Arbor Day in Bloomington. Yay, that's good, Arbor Day. Now, the last thing I want to do is note, we celebrate an Arbor Day. It's a great day. But one other thing is happening in Arbor Day. This is going to be our city's urban forester, Lee Huss's last official urban forester Arbor Day. Because Lee Huss, who started work with the city of Bloomington in September 1983, is going to be retiring, he tells us, before the next Arbor Day. And Lee, you have been, are, and always will be Bloomington's first arborist, urban forester. Thank you. The legacy you have left will live for many generations. And Lee, you know, I know you're still going to be walking around seeing trees. Oh, that one needs this, that one needs this, that one needs pruning, got to remove that one, got to plant one here. You can't help it. But we so celebrate what you've done for Bloomington over your years of support. And we wish you the very best. And again, Bloomington's forest will always bear the imprint and the thumbprint and the bootprint of Lee Huss for generations. So thank you, Lee, for all you've done. And I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Cohen from the Bloomington Tree Commission to tell us a little bit more. Lauren.
Hi, my name is Laurel Cornell. I am the chair of the Bloomington Tree Commission. I want to first urge everyone to come over here and pick up some of these tree seedlings. There's some really nice native hardwoods here that I think you will really enjoy having in your yard or in your farm. So please come over and pick some of them up. I want to talk about three questions. First, how about emerald ash borer? Secondly, how do we keep track of our trees? And thirdly, what are our next challenges? So, in the terms of emerald ash borer, basically we're winning. You know about emerald ash borer, it's a little insect that's eating up all the ash trees that came about 10 or 15 years ago into our country as an invasive kind of thing. And we expected that the emerald ash borer was going to increase and increase and increase and then have a population decline as it basically consumed all the ash trees. So, as urban foresters, what should we do? In some places had many, many ash trees, and the first thing they did was they just went and cut down all their ash trees, so they don't have any ash trees anymore. Now, ash trees are really an important part of our native forest here in Indiana, so therefore that was kind of not such a great idea. What we did instead was a successful strategy that had three parts. The first part was for the smallest ash trees. What we did was we simply removed them and replaced them with other kinds of trees. Second part, we did the same thing with the really, really large ash trees because we knew that they couldn't be saved either. But for the medium-sized ash trees, what we have had for the past 7 or 8 years is a program of treating them on a 3-year cycle. And we're now on the third of those 3-year cycles to keep those ash trees healthy until the emerald ash borer reaches its peak and then disappears. So hopefully in 3 years or 6 years or 9 years, we will still have a large number of ash trees here in Bloomington. I've just talked about ash trees. You might ask, well, how do we keep track of our trees? Now, for the most part, trees are not just going to get up and run away, though sometimes we do have the situation of trees moving away from where they are, not of their own volition. What we're doing right now is we're doing a tree inventory. And the tree inventory is really useful for several reasons. One of the reasons is that it shows us the diversity of our trees. As with every kind of community, having a diverse community makes the community stronger. If you have a community that just has one type of tree, like some of the cities in Indiana that just had a lot of ash trees did, they suffered a great deal with emerald ash borer. But in a community like ours, with lots of different kinds of trees, we're much stronger, we're much healthier, we're much more resilient. So the tree inventory enables us to look out and say, what percentage of trees are this kind, what percentage of trees are that kind. Second thing we want to use with the tree inventory is, we know that the mayor is really enthusiastic about planting trees, and the question is, where are we going to plant those trees? We have lots of tree plots in the city of Bloomington that don't have trees in them. So one second advantage of the tree inventory is that we get to look at our space and see where we can put new trees. And if you know of a place in your neighborhood, a tree plot that doesn't have a tree, please talk to Lee. You can email him on the city website and let him know where that empty tree plot is. Third reason for doing this is, for the first time, we've done a tree inventory in the past, about 10 or 12 years ago. For the first time, you as citizens are going to be able to look at a map and find out information about the trees in your neighborhood, or indeed any place in the city of Bloomington. So if you want to know how many ash trees there are and where they're located and how large they are, you as a citizen can now go out, once we get the tree inventory finished, go out and look at the trees in Bloomington and learn about the trees in Bloomington. In connection with that, the Tree Commission is going to be working on a new 5-year plan to think about the diversity of our trees, to think about where trees should be located, to think about what kind of trees we should use. So, the third thing I want to talk about is what is our next challenge. If you look out here on the Beeline Trail, you notice that there used to be these tall white trees around here. These tall trees, kind of shaped like lollipops, and they're kind of white and pretty in the spring. You go back and look at tree stuff in the late 90s, the early 2000s, you see there was this new wonderful tree that came out. It was an ornamental pear tree. It bloomed white in the spring. It had beautiful leaves that turned reddish in the fall. It didn't get very tall. It lived in all kinds of different places. Everyone said, this is a wonderful tree. And on top of that, the flowering pears were sterile trees. That is to say, you could plant them here, you could plant them there, you could plant them someplace else. You would have no problem with having too many trees. Well, I remember in the mid-2000s, I live here in Bloomington, and I have 2 flowering pear trees in the tree lawn in front of my house. And they did their thing, and they were beautiful for a long time. But then I noticed one year they had fruit on them. Little tiny, round, reddish, greenish balls of fruit. And this was really, really strange, because after all, these trees were supposed to be sterile. And they had fruit on them the next year, and the fruit started dropping around. And the fruit dropped all over my yard and all over the sidewalk, making a really messy sidewalk for bicyclists and so on. And I saw all of these little seedlings come up. Little seedlings that are really hard to pull out, and little seedlings that have nasty thorns on them. So I was no longer so fond of this tree. In fact, my experience in my yard is the same experience that we have been having all over Bloomington, all over Indiana, all over the United States over the past 10 years or so. And these trees that in the early 2000s seemed like wonderful trees have actually turned out to be really, really nasty trees. They're not sterile, they do breed, they do produce fruit, and because they're trees that live in every place, they just spread like wildfire. You may say, well, who cares about that? The reason you care about it is because when you look at our open spaces, when you look at our woods, as I said before, you want to have a diversity of trees. What these flowering pears do is they reduce the diversity of trees. We've just had a month or so where you go out, I'm standing here on the Beeline Trail, I can see a red bud right down there on the trail, it's still a little bit purple with the leaves. You see dogwoods, you see amelanchiers, you see all those early spring trees blooming over the past couple of weeks. With the flowering pears will outcompete those trees. We don't do something about the flowering pears, all our fields and all our woods are going to be filled with flowering pears over the next 10, 15, 20 years. So one of our next projects as a tree commission, as an urban forestry commission, is to think about how we are going to limit the spread of the flowering pears. Finally, if you want to know about that, if you want to know some of the opportunities, talk to anyone on the tree commission or send an email to Lee. He'll be glad to talk to you about that upcoming issue in tree care. Finally, I want to echo the mayor's comments in thanking Lee Huss for his work as an urban forester here. We've had lots and lots of Arbor Day celebrations here in Bloomington. And if you look around here on the Beeline Trail, if you look by City Hall, if you look over in Bryant Park, if you look at schools and other parks around the community, you'll see a tree with a plaque on it that says, this tree was planted as an Arbor Day tree in 1986. This tree was planted as an Arbor Day tree in 1992. This tree was planted as an Arbor Day tree in 2010, and so on and so forth. And all those Arbor Day trees that you see planted around Bloomington are a result of the work of our urban forester, Lee Huss. So again, I'd like to thank Lee for all of his years supporting Arbor Day and planting all these great Arbor Day trees here in Bloomington. And now we're going to go on, and guess what? We're going to plant another Arbor Day tree. So everyone come on down here, take a look at the tree we're planting, and come by and pick up some of these wonderful tree seedlings. Thank you very much.